Can I have your attention, please? If you'd like to gather in the shade, or if you'd like to stay in the sun, we're ready to start our program now, please.
Gather in the sun. I was totally like, why are they going to be in the sun? It's close enough.
Oh wow, yeah.
Have a seat here. There's Kathy Cramsey. Is it your seat here? Okay, on behalf of the Summit Hill Historical Society, I'd like to welcome everybody to our 100th anniversary of Ludlow Park and 125th anniversary of Summit Hill. Is that better?
Better.
Louder yet? Okay. The Summit Hill Historical Society was established in 1997, and when we did our bylaws, one of the things we were committed to do was to restore the historic beauty of Summit Hill, besides saving our memorabilia and recording Summit Hill history. In the past, we did the crossover out of the highway in Pine Street in Ludlow. We did a Civil War or an unknown soldier monument up in Memorial Park. The gateway signs of Summit Hill were part of our responsibility, as well as the entry into the park. So we had a history over the last, since 97, trying to beautify Summit Hill and make it nice. So today's the culmination of that. This was our most ambitious, most time-consuming, and most expensive project. So I'm glad you're all here today to see what has come to fruition in Summit Hill here. This time I'd like to ask Father James Burdett from St. Joseph's Roman Catholic Church to offer the invocation.
Father, as we gather today on this beautiful summer day, recalling the events of 100 years ago, the original dedication of this park, we ask your blessing upon us and our gathering. Help us to remember those who have served our nation in its various conflicts, and to continue to stand up for the ideals that they represent. We ask this through Christ our Lord.
Please remain standing as you're able, as Kathy Cramsey, a Summit Hill resident and our local noted vocalist, offered the national anthem. Kathy.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled
This time I'd like to introduce our guests who have come today. Paul McGardle, Mayor of Summit Hill. Paul is such a great supporter of all the activities of Summit Hill, so I'd like Paul to make a few remarks as his post as mayor.
Okay, thank you, Louis. I would like to, well, two things. I'd like to squelch the rumor that you may have heard. I was not here for the original dedication. That is not true. And also, I would like to just thank the Historical Society, and most of them are part of the Shade Commission too. Look at this beautiful park. Unbelievable what they did, a lot of work, like Louis said, also a lot of money. So I just want to thank them for this and just for all they do in this town. And thank you and welcome to this rededication today. Bye.
Thank you, Paul. At this time, I'd like to introduce Representative Jerry Knowles. He's going to be our representative since Summit Hill is in his congressional district now, so please welcome Representative Jerry Knowles.
Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you all for inviting me to be here and to celebrate with you. I'm the new guy on the block in terms of your legislator. If I'm successful in the election in November, I will be hopefully representing the borough of Summit Hill. I greatly look forward to that. I can tell you that regularly I visit the Parkview up the street, and my wife and I come up for dinner a lot on Saturday nights. And since I knew that I was going to be representing Summit Hill, I've just kind of been cruising around. When we get done eating, we just kind of ride around a little bit and look around. And what I can tell you is that Summit Hill, I feel very fortunate to have the opportunity to represent you. Summit Hill is one of the crown jewels in Carbon County and in the area. I just was so impressed with how well the houses are maintained, the properties are maintained. This Ludlow Park is just gorgeous. We walked around here a couple of times after we come out of the Parkview, and it's something that you all can be very proud of. I want to congratulate all of you. I'm not going to start naming names because you get into trouble, but everybody seems to be talking about the same thing, and that is the number of people who volunteer and work for things like this project, or like this park, and nobody really knows who they are. But I want to congratulate all of you. You know who you are, and thank you for what you do for your community. And on behalf of Representative Doyle Heffley, who currently is your legislator, I'd like to present the Ludlow Park volunteers with a house citation as well as the Borough of Summit Hill for your 125th anniversary. I would urge you to continue to do what you're doing. I tell you that I look very much forward to working with all of you, and what a beautiful day. Summit Hill must be doing something right, huh? So happy anniversary to all of you, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
At this time, I'd like to have Billy O'Gurk offer a few remarks. Bill's a former mayor of Summit Hill, lifelong Summit Hill resident, and currently our county commissioner. So, Bill.
Thank you, Lou. Well, I certainly want to thank Dr. Vermillion for inviting me to say a few words. And I'd like to just start out by bringing you greetings on behalf of the Carbon County Commissioners and the people of Carbon County. I would tell you that many, many times people who visit Carbon County and specifically stop by our offices in Jim Thorpe often comment about how beautiful Carbon County is, and it is. And today is a day I think that we can proudly take our place among the beautiful sites and attractions and destinations of Carbon County, because seated here on top of the mountain where it all started with the Industrial Revolution, the discovery of coal, and all those great things that we know of Summit Hill, sits what Representative Knowles said, the crown jewel of Carbon County. What I would also tell you is that people in Carbon County also need to know that we have the best tenor and soloist in Carbon County as well, in Kathy Crampsey. So it's a great day for us, for all of us, and I'm just happy and tickled to be a part of it. And, I want to say to you that as you look around and you see the people who are responsible for this, think about this. It just didn't happen. A lot of work and raising money and effort and time and initiative went into that. And the credit actually belongs to those people, like President Roosevelt said, who are in the arena. In that regard, I look at Dave and all the people around here, and certainly the Vermillions and everyone who has been involved in the Historical Society, and think very proudly of them and how they have represented Summit Hill and helped Summit Hill to maintain its historical significance. In that regard, again, I'd like to thank everyone for all the work and effort that you have done to make this a beautiful place that it is, and say to you, happy anniversary. Thank you.
Senator Johnny Duchek will not be here today. He's tied up in Harrisburg, and his representative could not make it either. But he also presented a citation for us to enjoy and as a recognition for his remarks. This time I'd like to have a brief history of Ludlow Park offered by David Wargo. David's a Historical Society member, of course, and former president of the Historical Society. And David did a lot of good things while he was president, and he's still very active in Summit Hill and other areas, so I ask David for his remarks.
Good morning, everyone. This beautiful park we're standing in was originally a staging yard for the coal cars and the railroad and the coal companies in the early 1800s. On December 2nd, 1871, Morgan Powell, who was one of the superintendents that was killed during the problems with the Molly Maguires, was actually shot at close range at that building, and he collapsed in the park and was carried back into the store where he later expired. By 1874, this ground was totally vacated, but the coal company still owned it. In 1912, the Connor Post of the GAR, which is the Grand Army of the Republic, got permission from the coal company to erect a flagpole in this area, and they called it the Liberty Pole to honor the men who answered President Lincoln's call to serve the Union. The town residents, inspired by the flagpole, got more and more interested in wanting to put a lasting memorial here for all those veterans that served in the Civil War. So they worked together and formed the Summit Hill Improvement Society and raised money and erected the monument, which you see behind us. Ironically, the monument, which was originally supposed to be dedicated on July 4th, 1914, which is 100 years ago from this week, only was partially here. That middle section that you see between the soldier and the base didn't make it in time, which caused a lot of embarrassment to the officials in town. So to get around the problem, they put a bunting between the base of the soldier and the base of the monument, and they held their dedication anyway on July 4th, which just goes to show the perseverance of all of us here on the Hill. When the middle of the base finally arrived, they rededicated it in September 5th of that year. Ironically, by that point in time, the Connor Post that was instrumental in getting this ground for the park opted out of the actual celebration. So even though we dedicated a Civil War memorial in 1914, there were no Civil War veterans here because they were protesting how the town went about creating the monument. So time went by. As the wars in the 20th century occurred, more and more monuments were added to the park. The park was leased from the coal company at $1 a year from Edwin Ludlow, was the superintendent that brokered that deal with the town fathers. And eventually the town secured the park permanently. In 1915, the two cannons that are here were given by the Sons of the Unions of Veterans of the Civil War to help adorn the monument and make it look better. In the early 1980, well, in 1989, that bell that's over there that we ring every year for the Memorial Day celebration, that bell originally came from the Lincoln School, which stood on the other side of town where the post office currently is. And when it was taken down, Dr. Boner rescued the bell and took it to his garage and stored it there. And when the centennial celebration was going to occur, they built the little pagoda there and put the bell inside of it, and it's rung every year on Memorial Day. In the 1990s, the Summit Hill Business and Professional Organization added to the park by adding the gazebo that adorns the center of the park. So over the years, we've continued to grow and improve, and now the Historical Society spearheaded an effort with all the organizations in town to put the pavers in, to restore the park and add new benches and tables. And so that brings us to today, where we get to join history and rededicate this beautiful park and remember the people that offered themselves to make it what it is today. So give yourselves all a big round of applause, because we're all part of that history. Thank you.
This time, I'd like to introduce Ted Dombrowski. You may recognize Ted from the Summit Hill Memorial Day Parade. Every year, or for a lot of years anyway, the 81st PA reenactors have been parading in that parade and offering their volley at various points along the parade. So thanks to the efforts of Joe Nine and for helping me secure Ted to come today. I'd like to welcome Ted Dombrowski as our speaker and offer some remarks on Summit Hill.
Thank you. Good morning. I am here today representing the men of the 81st Pennsylvania Volunteer Infantry. Company H of this regiment came from Summit Hill. It consisted of men who lived and worked in Summit Hill. It was also the recruiting point for Company H. Men from their surrounding communities came here to enlist in the Army. The Summit Hill Armory served as the recruiting station. I understand it once stood where the fire station now stands, right across the street. The majority of the men enlisted here on August 22nd, 1861. And by the way, the GAR post that served Summit Hill here, that was mentioned, was named after Eli T. Connor from Mock Chunk, who was a major in the 81st Pennsylvania and was killed in action at July 1st, 1862 at Malvern Hill. Thomas C. Harkness was the original captain of Company H. He came from Wilkes-Barre, although born in Scotland, and was involved in the coal mining industry. He was considered a brave man. He was wounded 6 times during his service in the war. He was promoted to major and then to lieutenant colonel. He eventually resigned his commission due to his wounds. When Captain Harkness was promoted to major, Lieutenant Thomas C. Williams was promoted to captain to command Company H. He enlisted as a sergeant and was then commissioned as a lieutenant. His brother David served as the company's drummer. Captain Williams was wounded 4 times and also resigned because of his wounds. He died in Lansford in 1906. He and his brother are buried here in Summit Hill in the Grand Army Cemetery. The 10 companies that were recruited for the regiment rendezvoused at the camp of instruction at Easton. They then moved to Washington, D.C., where they were mustered into federal service on October 27, 1861. The regiment received its baptism of fire at Fair Oaks, June 1, 1862. At this battle, an 18-year-old laborer from Summit Hill named John Gormley was severely wounded. He would die of his wounds about a month later. Company H fought in the 7 Days battles while retreating on the peninsula. June 30th, 1862 took a heavy toll on Company H at Charles City Crossroads, also known as the Peach Orchard. Those killed in action were Anthony Rymiller, a 25-year-old miner from Tresco, Andrew Rogers, a 21-year-old miner from Schuylkill County, John Miller, an 18-year-old farmer, William Delamore, a 21-year-old miner, and Jeremiah DeLay, a 23-year-old blacksmith from Tamaqua. Michael Fritz, a 22-year-old from Mock Chunk, was severely wounded in this battle. He died on the boat on the way back to Fortress Monroe. The next day, July 1st, at Malvern Hill, John O'Donnell was killed in action. He was an 18-year-old miner from Monnoy City. Leaving the peninsula, the regiment, along with the 2nd Corps, was held in reserve at the Second Battle of Bull Run. In September of 1862, the men fought at the Sunken Road at Antietam. On December 13, 1862, the men of Company H found themselves attacking rebel breastworks at Fredericksburg. More men from Summit Hill gave their lives. Hugh Williamson, a 21-year-old miner, Emmanuel Zimmerman, a 22-year-old farmer, James Gleneye, a 30-year-old laborer from Schuylkill County, and John McLean, a 21-year-old farmer, both died of their wounds in January of 1863. Charles Murphy, a 21-year-old laborer, was also wounded. He died in December of 1862 after contracting typhoid fever. 1863 opened with fighting at Chancellorsville. John Ratcliffe, an 18-year-old laborer from Schuylkill County, fell here. At Gettysburg, the men fought in the wheat field. In the fall of 1863, there were battles at Brisbane Station and Mine Run. 1864 saw even more fighting with the Overland Campaign. This was the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, Poe River, and Cold Harbor. Owen Fisher, a 21-year-old laborer from Schuylkill County, was taken prisoner. He died in a prison in Richmond in June of 1864. Sergeant Ed Reynolds was a 21-year-old miner from Beaver Meadows. He was wounded at Chancellorsville in May of 1863. A little over a year later, he was killed in action at Cold Harbor on June 3rd, 1864. The Army of the Potomac then trapped the rebels at Petersburg and began siege operations. Patrick Fitzpatrick was killed in the trenches at Petersburg. He was a 38-year-old teamster from Summit Hill with a wife and children. On August 25th, 1864, the Army tried to break the rebel lines at a place called Reams Station. James Murray enlisted here on August 22nd, 1861. He was promoted to color sergeant. Only the finest soldiers and bravest men were selected to carry the colors. This 18-year-old carpenter was no different. By August 1864, his term of service had expired. He was discharged. He could come back home here with family and friends. He knew an attack was planned. He agonized over leaving his comrades. His friends had to strip him of his gear and push him to the rear. When the sound of gunfire reached his ears, he could not leave. He rushed to his comrades in Company H, picking up a musket and ammunition from the field. This was Sergeant James Murray's last battle, one that he would not survive. He would not return home again. Rebel gunfire and cannon shot were not the only enemy of the soldier. The unseen enemy of disease was just as deadly. Company H had their share of misery and death. Sergeant John Boyd was a 18-year-old laborer from Summit Hill. He died of typhoid fever in February of 1862 before any gunfire started. William Casey was an 18-year-old from Tamaqua. He died in May of 1862 near Yorktown. Martin Betts was a 35-year-old laborer from Beaver Meadows, married with 3 children. Died in September of 1862 of chronic diarrhea. And David E. Davis, a 23-year-old miner, died in April of 1863 of inflammation of the kidneys. Which brings us to Private Thomas Robinson. He was a 30-year-old miner from Tamaqua and born in Ireland. He stood 6 feet 3 inches tall, which was considered quite tall at the time. He enlisted here on August 22nd, 1861. He was in and out of hospitals in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, and David's Island, New York, with lung disease or tuberculosis. Perhaps he was suffering from black lung, what we call black lung today. This lasted about 2.5 years. He was finally determined well enough to return to his regiment in Company H. When he arrived, some of the men sneered at him. They felt he was a shirker and a slacker. He was determined to prove otherwise. He still had trouble while on the march and lagged behind. On May 12, 1864, the 2nd Corps attacked the salient at Spotsylvania. There was horrendous fighting here. Thomas Robinson was there in the thick of it. He fought like a demon. In hand-to-hand combat, he captured a rebel flag. Less than a month later, at Cold Harbor, he was wounded in the ankle. His foot would be amputated. Because of his fighting and capture of the enemy flag, he was awarded our country's highest honor, the Congressional Medal of Honor. When the war ended, the men returned home. Some came back to Summit Hill. Others moved on elsewhere. Some men came from different places to Summit Hill. Some of these men are here for all eternity. Captain Thomas C. Williams, Company H, and his brother, Private David Williams, Company H. Captain John McLaughlin, Company H. Private William Kisner, Company H. Private Daniel McLean, Company H. Private Monroe Smith, Company G. Private Jacob Strauss, Company G. And Private Philip Thomas, Company H, are all buried in the Grand Army Republic Cemetery. Private William Kane, Company H, Private Charles Kelly, Company K, are buried in St. Joseph Cemetery. Private William Clemens, Private Buchanan McMillan, Private Charles Fritz, and Private James Murphy, all of Company H, were buried in the Presbyterian Cemetery. This cemetery is now a public park. It is uncertain where these men lie at rest today. These are just some of the men of just one company of one regiment. Many others were wounded, some were crippled for life. Still others had their health broken and prevented them from working as they did before and shortened their lifespan. Many other men served their country from Summit Hill in the infantry, cavalry, the artillery, and the Navy. This small community gave their fullest when called upon. Summit Hill should be justly proud of what their sons accomplished. They preserved freedom. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. He looks so resplendent in his outfit.
And warm.
You're the warmest here. You want to sit in the shade for a while? You're welcome. This time I'd like to rededicate our Civil War monument and Ludlow Park with a few words. 100 years ago this week, the park and Civil War monument became a reality because of the vision, dedication, and pride of our forefathers to honor the Civil War veterans and their sacrifices. The borough was only incorporated 25 years earlier. Over the last century, much has happened to improve the park as well as the borough of Summit Hill. Each succeeding generation has added various enhancements, and today we add to that timeline as seen on our brochure and discussed today by other speakers. We now proclaim with pride that the Civil War Monument is rededicated, and the park with its new walkways, benches, and tables are dedicated to the people of Summit Hill. I'd like to challenge future generations to continue to care and improve for Ludlow Park and the borough of Summit Hill. Thank you. At this time, I'd ask James Ticina, as Summit Hill Historically Vice President, to offer our memorials that were presented. Jim?
Welcome, everyone. I'm really pleased to see the number of people that are present here today. I have the distinct pleasure of really honoring those of you who contributed financially to this project. Yes, there were people who worked hard at it, and there's no question about that. But without your financial support, this would not have taken place. So without any delay, I would like you to look at your program that you have there, and you see on your list all these people from the community. Through their generosity and through their pride in their community, we are deeply indebted to all of you on this list, to the organizations that have contributed a large sum of money in many cases. We too are so proud of you, and for that reason we're going to take a minute or two to talk about these. If anyone on the citizens list, our current residents or former residents, has been missed, I apologize. let us know, and we'll definitely try to take care of that for you. But first, let me get involved with the people that deserve some recognition. Financially, the Summer Hill Historical Society has contributed well over $5,000. The Summer Hill Community Improvement Organization, which is no longer in existence, gave us $33,000 towards this project. The Summer Hill Shade Tree Commission gave us $5,000. The Summer Hill Lions, a very active, community-minded group, has pledged $5,000 and have given over $2,500 to us already. We also want to thank Matt Lang and his landscaping, Earl Henniger and Roy Henniger, the Stony Loney Excavating. They gave $1,000 worth of labor towards us. We want to thank the Summer Hill Borough workers, Ron Yurchek and Bill Frantz, and Kevin O'Donnell from setting up the sound system, which you're listening to me with. Nate Halnor and the St. Joseph Church helped us immensely with a big foredrawing, which we will be using the profit from that towards this park. The Sons of the American Legion, who gave us $200. The Summer Hill Alumni Association gave us well over $950. And last but not least, the St. Gabriel's Club. I said to you before, the community-minded, excuse me for a second, our Lions Club. But the reason I'm having a hard time here, I don't know if there's a better organization than St. Gabriel's. These guys are always out front. And I really am proud to say that I know these members, and they've helped us immensely. We had a spaghetti dinner last weekend. Well over $1,500 they raised, and they cost this organization a single penny. They're involved in many other activities, and for that I really thank them, and I apologize for mine. But anyway, I also want to get into the heart and soul of the park. We have 12 benches. Each bench cost us $700, and these people came forth, and you'll hear some of their names now. Memorial benches, some in honor of their past relatives, and some in honor, right now, of the living people. Peter Turpak by Kathleen Turpak and family. Rick Johnson by Diane Johnson Gersbach. The past and present members of St. Gabriel's Italian Club, Lodge number 43. Rose and Waylon Kaiser and Helen and Jacob Stachina by Jim and Mary Ann Stachina and family. Gregory D'Amelio by Phyllis Santo. A special one to Major General Philip D. Ginter by Louise C. Ginter Caldwell. The Helping Hand Clink by Marlene Bishago. John and Alice Gormley by Attorney John Gormley. The Carnage King Nardini family by Mitch and Betty King. Hugh and Jeanette Derby by their sons and daughters. And a bench donated by Ronald and Martha Turpak. And finally, Lorenz Whitey Arner and Francis Kleckner Arner by sons David and Donna Arner. For these 12 individuals and groups, thank you very much from the bottom of our hearts. Now we have 4 tables, and these 4 tables were a $1,000 donation. And we have a memorial table by Dr. Robert and Mrs. Arlene by the Arner family. The Velitsky and Redunda families by Attorney Joseph Velitsky. Gretel Malcolm by Louis and Maxine Vermillion. Lee Mons by the Mons and Gianfonsano family. And the last group that I want to call your attention to, we have flats of pavers that you see around here at $400 a flat. And Jim and Tony Holmes contributed a paver, $400 a paver. John Kupex, Claudia Kupex, and John Kupex did the same. And the money that came from the Summer Hill High School Alumni Association, we used to purchase well over 2 pavers. Again, I just want to say on behalf of all of the members of our Historical Society, Thank you very much. We truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim, for doing that part of the program. In the front of the podium here, this little monument, that's the newest addition to the park. There's information behind where Jim's sitting there. That's for Medal of Honor recipient Edward Brogan. That was installed like in 1914. He's buried in St. Joseph's Cemetery, and we recognize his efforts in the Civil War as well as the Indian Wars back in the 1870s at a program we had at the cemetery a few years ago. So I'd like to thank Jim McHugh. He's the one who, he's a great nephew of this Edward Brogan. He's the one that donated that monument. I'd like to recognize Jim for doing that for the park and the borough of Summit Hill, to recognize his great uncle. Also, at the end of the park, we replaced the, reinstalled the chair monument with the holds of flowers down there. That was missing since last fall when we did the pavers, and we reinstalled. I'd like to thank the Mons family for planting the flowers there again. They've been looking after that chair for a while, and I'd like to thank them for that. Jim did a lot of acknowledgments, so I had a couple notes here, but he covered that very well, all the acknowledgments. But I would just like to, within the Historical Society, there's people who went above and beyond the call, and Jim was one of them, and his wife Mary Ann, and my wife Maxine, and all the people I saw who sold tickets and did all this fundraising. It's been quite an effort and quite tiring as we come to this point today. But I'd like to at least mention the people who are on the park committee, who really did a lot of that. And he mentioned the Summit Hill Community Improvement Organization with their big donation. But the idea of this park improvement came because of a grant we applied how many years ago? Did like 4 or 5 years ago, and that grant never came to fruition because it was turned down, and nothing happened for a few years. So we decided to have a 3-year plan. This is the first year of our plan to try and do what was originally tried to get funded years ago. So we're going to continue this fundraising, continue this park enhancements here, so as we are able and as the resources allow. I think that's about all I would like to say on behalf of that, other than, at the risk of using names like Jerry said about don't mention names, a couple of names I just have to mention. The people who did the sweat equity part of this, John Kupek, I know John Kupek's here. He was very involved in Shade Tree Commission and the park. He's a master gardener. He's done so much as far as visioning and making the contacts with Matt. Is Matt Lang here? Matt, there's Matt back there. Cannot thank Matt Lang enough. He brought a crew of people in here. Within a month, he transformed this park. And Matt and John Kupek were kind of instrumental in coordinating that and getting the prices and what we wanted to do. So I'd like to recognize Matt. He might have some cards back for people who he wants to pass out his cards. But we were very proud of the work he did, as we had so many positive comments on Matt Lang's work. And he worked hand in hand with Earl Henninger to make this happen. And a lot of money was saved because Earl had a vision to do this thing called a compaction test. It's kind of detailed here, but instead of excavating all these walkways out to a depth of like 15 inches, we did a compaction test. We were able to put the pavers on top of the existing walkways. So some of those things were very cost-saving measures and stuff that I wasn't aware of, that we had good input on those type of things. So I thank especially Matt and Earl for doing all that. And borough workers were recognized, and a few other names, the sweat equity people, the guys who assembled the benches. These benches just didn't appear here. They had to be loaded off the truck. You know, one day they were there with the payloader pulling these 1,000-pound pallets off the truck to assemble them. So, you know, Jimmy Holmes helped put them together. My brother Kenny Vermillion helped put them together. Charlie Vasilio. Here, I'll probably miss people. Tommy Midas was there. You know, people that sweated for this park. I'd like to recognize those names. Okay. This time I'd like Father Burdess to offer the benediction, and we can get out of the hot sun here and enjoy the rest of the day. Father.
Father, we have stopped today to remember the dedication of this park, the establishment of the borough of Summit Hill. We thank you for the many blessings that you have bestowed on our community, and ask that you continue to bless us as we go forward, serving the ideals of our nation represented by all of its veterans, continuing to stand up against all who would denigrate or take away from the great heritage that is ours. We ask your blessing upon all of us and your blessing upon the descendants who will continue to make this park the center of our town and the center of our Thanksgiving for all who have served in one way or another. Be with us, guide us, and protect us always in your name, forever and ever.
Thank you, Father. Thank you, Father. Thank you again for everybody coming. I hope the support continues for what we do in Ludlow Park, and have a great weekend.